Story 1. I attended an online university for a computer animation degree. I was accused of plagiarism by one of my professors. The day after I received the grade for my final project, I uploaded the video to my YouTube channel. The following week, she claimed that I downloaded the video and used it as my project. I told her that was impossible since it was not uploaded to YouTube until the day after it was graded. I showed her, during a video call with her and the head of the computer science department, all the biweekly progress uploads I had submitted to the university server, with dates and timestamps for each upload. She said she never looked at the progress uploads and was not about to start then. She claimed my uploads could have been empty files and junk data. She refused to look at any of them. The department head took her side and told me I would be expelled from the university effective immediately. I uploaded an unlisted video to my YouTube channel stating who I was, including my name and student identification number, along with proof that my final project was uploaded to the same channel the day after it was graded. I recorded myself doing a search on YouTube for the exact title of my video, showing mine was the only copy on the site. I sent a link to that unlisted video in an email to her, the department head, and the university headmaster. I did not receive any response until over a month later, 3 weeks after graduation, from the headmaster himself. He called me, apologized for the mistake, told me my expulsion was overturned, and that my degree would be sent to me as soon as possible. The department head emailed me to apologize as well and informed me that the original grade for my project was too low. He raised it from B- to A. The professor never tried to contact me. To this day, I have no idea how she saw my project on YouTube. During the video call, I asked her how she became aware of it, but she never answered. Story 2. My mom and dad were accused of attempted murder of my older sister. She was about 10 months old and got tangled in her blanket, created a ligature, and she was blue when found. My dad went in to check on her when he got home from work as a night shift taxi driver and found her blue and unresponsive. He screamed. My mom woke up, and they both tried to get the blanket off. It was an open weave blanket, and her head had gone through one of the weaves and then wrapped. They had to cut it off eventually. She came around and was breathing normally by the time the ambulance arrived. They called an ambulance, and once in hospital, the doctor accused my dad of choking her. He said the ligature pattern and subsequent marks from trying to get it off did not match their story. They were both arrested and charged with attempted murder. They took my sister into foster care. She stayed there for a year while the legal process was underway. They had no evidence other than the doctor's testimony. They expected my parents to turn on each other, or at least my mom to blame my dad. They stayed strong even though my mom was pregnant with me at the time, and they were told I would be taken away too. My dad even told my mom that if it came to it, she should blame him so she could get my sister back and keep me. The whole neighborhood turned against them. They lost friends, and even some family believed, "There's no smoke without fire" nonsense. By the time it got to court, the whole case fell apart. They were found not guilty, they got my sister back, and I was born. My mom and dad never really recovered though, and they got divorced. No apology was ever received, and for a lot of relationships, the damage was done. Story 3. My previous employer accused me of unemployment fraud more than 2 years after the fact. I had to gather my pay stubs and unemployment claims, align them with the alleged fraud dates, and submit the information to the Department of Labor. There was a meeting with me, the Department of Labor, and my company. The company did not attend. I provided my information verbally to the caseworker, and that was the end of it. There is no retaliation for the false claim. Story 4. One of my least favorite stories. When I was 15, I was basically accused of raping a 10-year-old girl. Police randomly showed up at my high school, pulled me out of class, and questioned me without my parents present. I had no idea who they were talking about, and the entire scenario they described didn't make any sense. They said things like, "She says you started touching her in the pool." I didn't have a pool. "You pinned her on your bed." I'd never had any girl on my bed. I was only 15 and wasn't that cool. Not even once. We didn't get the details for several weeks, until after I was formally charged. The girl was a friend of one of my cousins and my sister, and her mom had become friends with my aunt. She claimed it had happened several years earlier when she was 10 and I was 12, at the house my family had lived in a few years before. It still didn't happen and made no sense, but it let us start piecing things together. The breakthrough came when the prosecutors turned the evidence over to my lawyer as part of the case. Turned out she had made a very specific accusation. She had stayed a couple of nights at my house with my sister and cousin, and they pulled the exact dates based on phone records and an overlapping birthday. She claimed I raped her one night while she was staying there, but their own evidence got the case dismissed. When my mom saw the full accusation, her very first comment was, "But he wasn't even here that week." I didn't remember any of it, because the girl had stayed at my house the same week I'd been at a Boy Scout summer camp. My sister got to have a multi-day sleepover with her friends partly because I was gone anyway. We requested the records from the summer camp, which verified that I was several hundred miles away when the assault allegedly happened. We had affidavits from several camp staff, adult leaders, and other scouts who remembered me being there. We had documentation from the bus company that drove us there and brought us back. We had photos of me at the camp. I left 3 days before she came to my house and got back the afternoon they left. The evidence was clear. I could not have done it. We were never in the house at the same time. The district attorney dropped the charges a few days after my lawyer sent them the records. My aunt still believed I had and spent more than a year telling everyone in the family that I was a pedophile and couldn't be trusted around kids, that I shouldn't ever be invited to family events. It did quite a bit of damage to the family. Again, I was only 15. About 2 years later, my cousin found out the real story. The girl's mom was very religious and had walked in on the girl, then 13, having sex with her boyfriend. The mom flipped out and called the police. During the questioning that followed, she was asked about the first person to ever touch her or have sex with her. The actual person was the same boyfriend she'd been caught with, but she didn't want to get him in more trouble. So she eventually named the random brother of a friend she hadn't seen in years, a guy she'd had a baby crush on once. She didn't think they'd pursue it. She apparently didn't do the math and realize how old she would have been when we last saw each other or what the implications were. By the time she did, she dug her hole so deep that she just kept digging. She didn't know how to tell everyone she'd made it up. She told my cousin, who leaked the real story to everyone. The girl publicly confirmed it, dismissing it as a stupid mistake she'd made as a little kid. This happened over 30 years ago. To this day, my aunt has never apologized. Story 5. Strained relationships. When I was 16, my stepmother accused me of stealing $1,000 from her dresser drawer. I did not even know it was there, and I had no way to prove I did not take it. The accusations kept coming, and the only people who believed me were my mother and stepfather. My father was so sure I had done it that he gave my stepmother $1,000 to make it right. The worst part was not even my father. It was my own brother saying he was sure I took it. After that, things between us were never quite the same. It did not matter what I said or how many times I said it. They just did not believe me. I felt completely helpless. Years later, my father mentioned my stepmother had the carpet replaced around that time, and I have always wondered if one of the workers who moved the dresser took it. But honestly, it does not change anything. 25 years later, I still get anxious about being accused of stealing. Even if something small goes missing like a pen, I tense up, waiting for someone to point the finger at me. Story 6. I was accused of shoplifting a bathing suit when I was around 13 years old. The store manager called the military police, who put my friend and me in their cruiser and took us to the station. My friend was laughing the entire time because she knew that we had not stolen anything, so she was not worried about getting in trouble. I was in tears because, even though I knew that I had not stolen anything, that fact would not save me from the irrational anger of my father. My parents met us at the station. My mother gave the military police permission to strip search me. They found nothing. I went on to have a complicated relationship with the police, with my parents, and with authority in general, not solely due to this event. Story 7. When I was 13, my stepfather stole some jewelry from my mom, pawned it, and tried to frame me for it. He even involved the police, and I was strongly interrogated by an officer in his car in my driveway. He kept trying to break me, using threats of imprisonment, being kicked out of school, and not seeing certain relatives. But since I had done nothing wrong, I sat there and took it, saying, I did not, at appropriate times. For a 13-year-old, it was pretty intense. When we discovered that my stepfather had done it, and had video evidence and witness testimony from the pawn shop where he sold the items, all the officer said was, I was just doing my job. I do not think he received any punishment. My mom divorced my stepfather that summer, but unless it is an emergency, I have not trusted police officers since. Story 8. I was a passenger of an ex-friend while they almost killed someone in a drunk driving accident. I pulled him from the car, sat down, and told him he was probably going to jail that night. When the police arrived, he started accusing me of being the driver. The woman who was hit began to support his claim, and I just went silent because it was not even my car. They said they had video of me driving from a nearby bank, footage from the woman's dashcam, and 3 witnesses against me. They took me to the hospital and stapled my arm, which had been split open going through the only broken window. I spent about 8 months fighting the case in pretrial before the DUI charge was dropped. They had photos of passenger-side seatbelt strap welts across my chest from the day I was bailed out of jail, but when I was brought to the hospital, they did not check, so I had to visit my own doctor to document the injuries. About a year later, I was sued. It took about 2 years for the man's insurance to settle with the woman for $40,000 while he maintained his innocence and gave a deposition claiming I was driving. They settled the day before my deposition was scheduled. Story 9. There was no apology. The comment was, well, you have to understand why we thought it was you. I was accused of forgery and theft of tens of thousands in savings bonds. The Federal Bureau of Investigation was involved, and it was not until the bank camera footage was reviewed, clearing me before my parents told me. I was the first person they suspected. They were prepared to send me to prison, but when they found out the culprit, they refused to press charges to allow the real thief to pay them back over time. I was just a Generation X stoner kid at the time. It was one of the many incidents that soured my relationship with my family. Story 10. When I was 17, I worked at a bed and breakfast on the beach with big fluffy comforters on the beds. I was accused in French of being a thief and fired on the spot because a guest's diamond earring studs went missing. I left in tears. 3 months later, my friend who got me the job was doing deep cleaning and found the pair of earrings. Luckily, she was honest. I must have accidentally knocked them off the nightstand when I made the bed that day. I never received an apology, my promised bonus, or a letter of recommendation. That woman made us use newspapers to wash the French doors surrounding the first floor of the building because she was so cheap. Story 11. I had to go to the honor court and fight for my life in college after a random person said I cheated on an exam. The professor did not want to report me but did. He had to come back from sabbatical. I spent a year with anxiety awaiting the honor court trial. After proving my innocence, all I got was an email stating, my verdict was not guilty. There was no presumption of innocent until proven guilty. The accuser did not show up. All of that anxiety and stress with no apology. My grades suffered during the whole ordeal. A friend who actually had prior cheating occurrences thinks I got off lucky. Who gets a C- on an exam they cheated on? Story 12. There was none. I was accused in a publication of being sympathetic to pedophiles. Background. I joined a new company as a team leader. There was an older employee on the team who had been at the company for a very long time. He joined before the company started conducting background checks on new hires. One day, our team assistant received a phone call asking why we hire pedophiles. She was flustered and did not understand what the caller was referring to. The caller then mentioned an old court case involving the older employee, in which he had been convicted and sentenced for sexual abuse of minors. Unfortunately, she was too flustered to remember our official policy regarding the media, which was, do not speak to the media. Instead, provide the contact number for our corporate communications team. She told the caller they needed to speak with me since I was the team leader. However, I was in a meeting and missed the call. When she informed me, I contacted corporate communications and explained what had happened. They said we would have to wait and see what would come of it and that they would investigate the employee's background. It turned out the caller was a journalist, and 1 or 2 days later, An article appeared in the newspaper accusing our company of hiring pedophiles. The article also claimed that I was responsible for hiring them and that I refused to comment. None of this was true. Within hours of the article's publication, I received a call from corporate with the following instructions. 1. I needed to work from home for 1 or 2 weeks so I would not be in the office if journalists arrived. This was so people could truthfully say, "He is not here today." 2. I was not to answer my phone unless the call was from an internal company number. 3. I was not to respond to any communications of any kind from the media. 4. They had investigated the employee's background, confirmed the situation, and the employee would be contacted by corporate human resources within the hour to inform him of his termination. I asked if we should discuss this with my supervisor. I was told the decision had already been made. I never had the opportunity to clear my name of the accusation of being sympathetic to pedophiles because my employer forbade me from discussing the matter. I was not allowed to call the journalist and explain that I had only worked there for 6 months, that the other employee had been there for 15 years, that I was not involved in his hiring, and that I was unaware of the situation. I suppose I could have, but I would likely have been fired, and at that point in my life, I could not afford to lose my job. Story 13. My ex-wife attacked me and accused me of attacking her. She called the police and I was charged. She cut me off from my son. In court a year later, the judge went as far as he could without directly calling her a liar, and I was acquitted. It took another year to regain access to my son. A year after that, she left my son to find his own way home. Instead, he called me, and I had a rideshare bring him to my house. The same therapist who managed my reintegration with my son was then acting as our parental coordinator. She got involved immediately and informed me, with my son listening, that my ex was accusing my son of attacking her. Thankfully, my ex did not escalate that to the police, so my son did not have to go through that process. It has been 2 years, and she has had no contact with my son since then. Story 14. I was accused of sexually assaulting someone I barely knew by someone I hung out with. I spent the night at their family's apartment sleeping in the living room on a large L-shaped couch. The girl I was accused of assaulting was sleeping on the floor. It was a normal day for someone my age. We just smoked, hung out, and eventually had a small party with a little drinking before we all went to bed. The next morning, the 2 girls and I woke up and went into town to do some shopping and walk around. Everything was normal. Several hours later, I got a call from the first girl accusing me of assaulting the second girl. I was completely blindsided, confused, and horrified. The first girl's family was on the phone with her and passed the phone around so they could take turns insulting and threatening me when I tried to ask questions. It was terrifying and humiliating. I was 17 years old and a virgin. They kept saying if I tried to contact them further, they would involve the police for harassment. Eventually, I learned that the evidence of my assault was that the first girl's family heard me moving around a lot and making noise at night. I am a fitful, noisy sleeper, so whether or not that's true is beyond me. There were at least 7 or 8 people in the apartment that night, so it doesn't make sense that no one came to investigate the supposedly suspicious sounds. You're probably wondering about the second girl's reaction to all of this, the person I was falsely accused of assaulting. She was completely confused. I remained in contact with her throughout the event, and she was just as confused as I was. I kept asking her, "Why is the first girl saying this about me?" And she was equally clueless. The first girl even said, "If I find out you touched me too, you're dead." I'll never forget my dad telling me, "Well, we'll see what happens. If we need a lawyer, we will get one." I never found out why she did it. We had a completely normal, amicable friendship that was really only based around smoking weed. The second girl never found out either. The most awful part, aside from the accusations, is that we live in a relatively small town in Northern California. Word gets around quickly. I was terrified that it would get out and people would think the worst of me. I have seen her a few times at work over the years. I don't think she recognized me, but I really wished I could have gone up to her and asked why she did that, why it was so easy for her to lie. I guess I'll never know. It's a real head-scratcher. What could I do? Normally, it's someone being accused by the victim. I was accused by someone of assaulting someone who then asked, Why is this person saying I did this to you? And they didn't know. It makes no sense. I refuse to accept this injustice. Story 15. No one apologizes to you or anything. Most just say, looks like you got away with it, assuming you are guilty and the case being dismissed was a fluke. Story 16. This situation is complicated. My father was falsely accused more than I was. I was accused of harming animals, even though no animal was harmed, because a neighbor's cat died. I was too young to remember many details and only learned enough recently to understand what happened. I am confident I know who did it, but it is too late to act. There is no way my father did it. His character does not fit. He rescued our family dog from neglect and possible abuse. The dog lived with us until old age. I believe the person who killed the cat also killed our dog, but I will not discuss that further. It also does not make sense given the timing, considering my father's work schedule and responsibilities caring for us children. My father was charged for the death of the cat. We changed our phone number and made it private because of harassment, including what I believe were death threats. Rumors spread, and I was accused of being an animal abuser because I came from a family of animal abusers. I was unable to prove my or my father's innocence, but I reassured some people that it was not true. The fact that animals generally loved me helped. I received responses like, "You have to understand why we thought you'd do it." Simply because I was a different child, probably autistic, with other issues people saw as strange, which makes it sadder. Some people stopped talking about it or stopped talking to me. I avoid mentioning this because it might revive rumors. There were no apologies or accountability for the mistreatment caused by these baseless accusations. People continued to doubt or distrust me because they had solidified their views before I could respond. Regarding a more personal issue, my family accused me of using heroin while I was struggling with serious health problems I had complained about for years. I lost over half my body weight, dropping from 145 kilograms to under 70 kilograms in less than a year. Despite this, I was treated like a heroin addict. My family would not trust me with money. A monetary gift promised for my 18th birthday, meant for something important like a house or car, remained unused because I had nothing to spend it on at the time. During a difficult period when I needed to move, I was still not trusted with this money. I was excluded from many family events, and people constantly pressured me, despite my repeated statements that I have never used heroin. I do not even like taking the prescribed opioids for my pain, so the accusations were especially hurtful. I do not know what changed their minds, but the accusations eventually stopped being brought up. There were no apologies or acknowledgement of the pain this caused. Things have improved with my family in recent years, but it still hurts to know that while I was very ill, I was treated like a drug addict by my own family. Story 17. I'm Middle Eastern. Once, apparently, a substitute teacher told the school administration that I had plans to blow up the school. I had some decent rapport with school administration as I was a pretty above-average student, with an older brother who was an incredibly above-average student. I never got a detention before, and in middle school, my entire plan was to basically go as unnoticed as possible. After what she said to the administrators, I think they were legally obligated to involve law enforcement, so I endured a couple of hours of real interrogation. I've never trusted police or anyone with legal authority, and I was taught my basic rights pretty early on in life after a separate issue earlier that year. Basically, nothing came of it, and my principal said he pretty much figured it was a misunderstanding or just blatant racism. However, when a teacher submits a statement like that, there has to be an appropriate legal process since it was a public school. He said he was sorry, but his hands were tied regarding what I was about to go through. Still, he said he would argue in my defense as it was exceedingly unlikely that I would have said something like that. The interrogation was pretty intense for an 11-year-old, and my mother is a formidable woman. She was furious that I was so late coming home from school without any warning or heads up. When I explained myself, she got even more serious than I had ever seen, but luckily, I have great parents, and she was ready to defend me. Essentially, nothing happened beyond me being terrified of governmental authorities with power they can use at their discretion over you, for life. Story 18. The most likely situation is having a criminal record with no conviction that you must fight to have expunged. Otherwise, it will likely still appear on background checks. No one apologizes, and you do not receive an apology letter. You simply return to your life. Many people may assume you are still guilty and got off on a technicality. The only positive is becoming more familiar with the criminal justice system and realizing how flawed it is. I feel more qualified to serve on a jury now. Story 19. My ex accused me of stalking and cybercrimes. I had my security clearance revoked and my income reduced by half for almost a year while the matter went to court. When we went to court, I spent $25,000 just to get the opportunity to be heard and provide evidence. In the end, the police offered to drop everything if I agreed not to seek costs. Otherwise, they would drag it out and it would cost me a lot more money. Nobody apologized. It took a further year and a half to get my clearance reinstated and my pay returned to normal. That's the short story. The long story is this: we broke up when I caught her cheating. When I confronted her, she stabbed me in the throat and then called the police and ambulance, saying she had dumped me and that I tried to kill myself. Once I got out of the hospital, I moved away, changed my number, and updated all my social media details. 14 months later, I was served with a domestic violence order via email because the police could not find me. I tried calling the station several times to clear it up. When I spoke to the officer, he said they were coming after me because I was the only suspect she identified. I asked what I was being accused of, and they told me I would find out in court. I spoke to a lawyer immediately. They told me to refuse the interview because the police had already decided I was guilty. My boss and a few colleagues confronted me over the accusations, calling me a liar and an idiot. Then I was put on reduced duties and pay since my security clearance was revoked. You cannot have any legal proceedings against you to hold clearance. My friends said things like, "Come on, they would have done something if they were me." When I had to go to my local police station to get the temporary domestic violence order, the officer pulled my current partner aside and asked her a series of questions accusing me of domestic violence, which she angrily denied to the officer. The courts treated me like a criminal. I walked around with a big black mark against my name and was made to feel ashamed. In court, one time before it was settled, my lawyer asked for the case to be dropped due to lack of evidence or basis. My ex refused because she wanted to go the whole way to affect my career. In the end, it came to light that she was being physically stalked. I provided my location at the time of the alleged incidents, which showed me on the other side of the country. She was reportedly receiving nasty messages and being cyberstalked, but no evidence was ever provided other than someone sent revealing photos of her to her workplace. I never had access to those photos. By her own admission, they were taken by one of the men she was cheating on me with after we had broken up. But I was a man with depression from being in an emotionally abusive and manipulative relationship, so I had to be guilty because she said I was until proven otherwise. Story 20. Set up for taking money from a till. I knew I was being investigated for something because there was no covert effort on anyone's part. It had to be me, my kiosk, my till, my shop. I would get visits and random requests from head office and security to immediately produce my till's takings file, which I always provided. It got to the point where they had nothing on me, and my colleagues warned me that they had been told to take notes and report everything I did. It was, in fact, a very clever and concerted effort by the employee in charge of the financials in the cash office. I would send the money through the pneumatic tubes, and she would always skim 10 pounds off my shipment and mine alone. She would even record my shipments as received and counted, but do it later so she could take the 10 pounds. No apology. You have to understand why we thought it was you, and so on. I was falsely accused of rape about 6 years earlier when I had walked someone home drunk, and that was far less stressful and far easier to deal with than being stalked for months by security. Story 21. My ex-wife lied to her entire family, claiming that I had manipulated her by telling her I would kill myself if she left. Due to certain circumstances, there are valid reasons I remain in contact with most of them after the divorce. We all made an effort to avoid my ex and me being around each other while still allowing me time to spend with them, especially during holidays. Everyone in her family distanced themselves significantly. I am still trying to mend relationships now. Story 22. Nothing. I uprooted my entire life and moved away. As far as I can tell, she kept doing it to others. Story 23. This is not nearly as serious as some of the other comments, but I feel it will lighten the mood and it is relevant, so here it is. When I was around 18, I dated a guy named Tony. He was pretty muscular and often wore a tank top and sweatpants. I wore fleece pajama pants, a tank top, and carried a small backpack. We went to Best Buy one week to walk around and kill time. I found a small secure digital memory card I needed, so I bought it. We left and everything was fine. The next week, we went back to walk around, but we did not buy anything this time. As we were leaving, the security alarm went off, and they pulled us aside and demanded to search my backpack. I was so terrified of being in trouble because I had never done anything illegal. I happily let them search it, because I knew there was no stolen merchandise in it. She pulled out a few things and then found the secure digital card, still in its original packaging. My heart dropped. I said, "I have the receipt for that. It is in my car." And I left everything, plus my boyfriend as collateral, and ran out to my car. I had just cleaned it out a couple days prior and had left the receipt on the off chance I needed it. I was so lucky I had done that. I ran back in, showed the woman who accused me, and she verified it and apologized. She offered us a free CD of our choice for the trouble, but I declined because I completely understood where she was coming from. We absolutely looked like a couple of kids who could have been stealing, and the alarm had gone off. Also, I was not smart for bringing an unopened item right back into the store I bought it from. I apologized for wasting their time and we left. Story 24. An ex-supervisor. I was sacked the first and only time. In my 20s in Australia in the 1980s, I called the supervisor after a month of not receiving my final payment, asking where my last pay and holiday money were. He told me that the check had been cashed at a bank and told me to go away and stop trying to get extra money. He also said not to call the boss. I said no, I never got it, and called the boss. The supervisor then called the police on me. I had to go to the police station. Totally freaked me out. They showed me a copy of a check with my name crossed out, saying pay to cash. It was not my handwriting. I went from scared to furious. I knew exactly whose handwriting that was and proved it. He was sacked. I got my money. So Tony B., whose wife had just had a baby, do not mess with naive, scared girls. We will prevail in the end. Story 25. The teacher who accused me, at the time a high school student, of sexually harassing another student mumbled an insincere apology only because another teacher had just shown a video proving my innocence and continued to harbor resentment toward me. She suffered no consequences. Story 26. When I was in high school, a girl I didn't really know accused me of pushing her down the stairs at a house party. To my knowledge, she did not accidentally or drunkenly fall down the stairs during the party, and she certainly did not have any obvious injuries consistent with a fall. For some reason, she told everyone at school that I had pushed her down. Initially, all my male friends supported me when I denied the accusation, but the girls took her side, and the guys gradually followed. I was ostracized from my circle of friends. It made for a very difficult senior year. Looking back, I realized the girl who accused me used this lie to climb the social ladder and ingratiate herself with my friends. It was typical high school drama that does not compare to some other comments I have seen. Ultimately, I was never proven innocent, but the gossip died down. I was able to reinvent myself at university, have a successful life, and move on. Story 27. My ex was cheating on me in high school. I knew something was off. They became distant and agitated, which set off some alarm bells. The closer I got to the truth, the more extreme their reactions became. Finally, I narrowed it down to cheating because they were cheating within a social circle I was part of and was informed about. When they were backed into a corner to admit the truth, they accused me of being physically abusive. All of their brother's friends came after me for months. Once I proved that I had done nothing to harm them, everyone simply backed off. No apologies, just backing off. The fallout was minimal because the person was seen as socially flaky and manipulative. It turned out none of their friends actually believed them, except their brother, who, along with the friends, were simply violent individuals looking for a reason to attack someone. Story 28. I was accused of doing bad things by an ex-partner. I won't get into the details, but for some backstory, we had dated for 6 months. Then he left me for another girl, yet we remained good friends, still calling and hanging out. One night, while I was on a call with my current partner, my ex randomly sent me a message saying, "See ya." In my mind, that meant he was going to die. I started panicking and calling him, only to be told later that his girlfriend had contacted my current partner, asking why he was no longer friends with me. That's when the accusations began. My current partner was fully supportive and stood by my side, helping me defend myself. My ex kept changing the stories, and since it was all over messages, I could screenshot everything. I lost all my friends because no one would listen to me except my current partner. He eventually told everyone what happened and how my ex kept changing the stories about 4 times. After that, they believed me. My ex's girlfriend was upset that my partner was standing up for me. A year later, those two broke up. Now he's doing the same things to her that he did to me. She eventually came back to apologize, saying she now understands. I later found out he also accused me of cheating, saying, "I caught her in her own house in the act." I should mention I was 14 at the time. He also claimed she would go after every man who paid her attention. Story 29. Nowhere near as large as many others here. My story is that as a teenager, the public library claimed I had borrowed a book and not returned it. They kept calling my mother and demanding it back. Then they demanded payment for the book. I had never borrowed this book and was baffled by the whole situation. My mother kept refusing because I was sure I had never borrowed it. One day, they just stopped contacting us. The book had magically reappeared. They did not call to apologize or even to inform us it was found. Nothing. We had to call them to find out. They had barred me from borrowing books and thankfully lifted the ban. But what a mess. How hard is it to say, "Sorry, our mistake"? Story 30. The fallout is always the same. People who have no backbone believe the lies. Then there are the middlemen who wait to see what was really happening. I was recently terminated from my job, and there were numerous false accusations, mainly from my supervisor who pretended to be my friend until the day I was fired. She is the one who pulled the trigger. Many people I thought were. My friends stopped speaking to me, but many also reached out, not believing the lies. That was the best part because my integrity is undeniable. Now comes the legal action. My supervisor is licensed and committed many punishable actions, which I have hard evidence of. This is being enforced, and she is being held accountable. Many have come to me once they realized she is a disgrace. Story 31. It ruins you. You stop trusting people in any large capacity. You always wonder if someone will do it again. Every interaction that is not overwhelmingly positive becomes source material for the fear that it is going to happen again. First, they isolate you. After you isolate yourself, you live forever diminished from who you could be. I will never be who I was before it happened. Do not get me wrong, my life is good now. I have rebuilt from the destruction, and it has been almost a decade since. But when it is quiet and everyone has gone to bed, and it is just me alone with my thoughts. Story 32. My leashed Chihuahua and I were attacked by an unleashed dog, actually the second incident with the same dog, in the middle of a street. The owner ran out of his house and shoved me hard. I picked up my dog and called emergency services. Police arrived, and we walked to the scene of the incident. The assailant greeted the officer by his nickname, Nags, as if they were friends. An internal affairs audit later confirmed they had worked on several road projects together. It turns out my assailant is a contractor for the State Department of Transportation and knows many local police officers. The assailant said he never touched me. Police did not believe me and ignored my requests for a supervisor. I redialed emergency services to request a supervisor. A supervisor came out, investigated, and found a neighbor had a security camera pointed at the scene that recorded everything. The police report from that date shows that the assailant did shove me and lied to police. He was charged with assault and battery, but his charges were later dropped. Then he filed a fraudulent criminal complaint against me in court. The show cause hearing was 2 weeks after my father died of brain cancer, so I missed it. During this hearing, he lied under oath, and I was accused of entering his property to assault and threaten him. The magistrate did not review the police report or the video evidence. They found probable cause against me. This began a nearly year-and-a-half-long series of pretrial hearings I had to attend. I could not afford a lawyer and did not qualify for court-appointed representation. Felt like living in the twilight zone. Eventually, I accepted a pretrial probation deal to avoid trial. I did not plead guilty, but I still had to meet regularly with a probation officer who treated me like a criminal and referred to my assailant as the victim. Matthew Coughlin has never been held responsible for his actions. He still works for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, and the Massachusetts Department of Transportation has covered this up by blocking Freedom of Information Act requests and ignoring requests for public comment at board hearings. Story 33. I was falsely accused of sexual harassment. The only evidence was what she said, and Human Resources took her side. I was put through a hellish ordeal, and everyone at the company knew about it. I was uninvited from everything, became a complete outcast, and was passed over for a promotion I should have gotten. I am a gay man but was not openly gay in my professional life, as I do not mix my personal and professional lives. Evidence eventually came to light showing that what she said was impossible, and I was cleared. However, they let her stay working there. I had to take sexual harassment classes, and my sexuality came out during the investigation, so I was outed professionally. I ended up leaving not long after because enough people still assumed I was guilty, and I could not stand to be in the same room with that woman. She suffered zero consequences, and most people took my departure as an indication of guilt. I believe there should be major consequences for anyone who lies about something like this. Story 34. Before school shootings became common about 25 years ago, after a major school shooting happened in my state, my childhood bully accused me of threatening to shoot up the school. He even involved 2 other kids. I was questioned by the principal for what felt like hours. She was yelling at me, "Tell the truth," over and over until I finally said, "Fine, I'll lie. I said I was going to do it." Just then 2 police officers entered the office and stood next to me while my parents were called. I was suspended for a month, had to see a psychiatrist, and undergo other procedures. The bully later admitted he lied. Nothing happened to him. He did not get punished. I was allowed to return for the last 2 days of school. My parents had to threaten to sue the school to get the incident removed from my record and to have the principal fired. But other kids did not care. I spent the next 4 years at that school, grades 5 through 8, branded as the kid who was going to shoot up the school. It really affected me. The other students disliked me. Even in grade 8, new 5th graders learned of what happened and gave me a hard time. I had to attend therapy as an adult because of it. Even teachers treated me poorly. They often acted as if I was a burden in class. The school counselor pretended to care but pushed hard for me to attend an alternative high school, which we only realized after I graduated because the school did not directly state it was an alternative school until years later. That entire incident deeply affected me. I am in a great place now. I have a college education, I am still learning a second language, and I moved to another country. I bought a house here, have a family, and everything is going well. Story 35. Accused of threatening to assault a girl in high school. When evidence was presented that proved my innocence, nothing was done to the girl who made the accusation. Of course, I was the one who was told to let it go and move on. Story 36. Those who knew I was always innocent helped me celebrate. The ones who thought the worst of me are no longer in my life. Story 37. None of us have my job back. The person who spoke badly is married with children and is involved with the assistant who is also married with children. Story 38. A girl accused me of stalking her. She announced it on every social media platform, and we had similar friends because we attended the same schools at some point. I was 26 at the time. She claimed I followed her to bars, coffee shops, and texted her from different numbers. None of it ever happened. In fact, I was going through a rough time in life and developed agoraphobia, so I hardly left the house. My friend sent me a screenshot of her post, and I saw people I knew commenting on how disgusting and creepy they thought I was for doing something I never did. I received messages telling me to harm myself. I reported the Facebook post as false information and bullying, but they claimed it was not. Why did she do this? Why do people do evil things? Because they can. I dated someone she knew, and she did not like that. So she made up this entire scenario, claiming I was dating this girl just to get closer to her. How delusional can someone be? Knowing that our mutual friends still think of me as a creep has driven me into deep depression. Story 39. Teacher here. The principal falsified my evaluation, and I filed a grievance, which is like a school court for teaching. This person had been giving me trouble for 9 years just because I was competent and she was not. Anyway, I met with the superintendent, who also had a big chip on their shoulder, and I was called a liar in front of a committee of people for over an hour, despite having a body of evidence proving that my principal was lying. I ended up being monitored for half of the school year like a first-year teacher who did not know what they were doing. I have been teaching for 33 years. I have posted about this situation before. I am still working here and was planning to retire soon, but have decided to stay a bit longer to see how things play out because the tides are turning. Some things are coming to light, and I want to see how it all works out. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.